The emergency room never sounded quiet, but that morning the silence felt heavier than the alarms. Every doctor seemed too busy to notice the young nurse arranging surgical instruments with calm, practiced hands. Emily Carter had worked there only 3 weeks, and already she had become the favorite target for sarcastic jokes. Her plain scrubs, soft voice, and humble smile convinced everyone she lacked experience. Nobody bothered asking where she had learned to stay so composed under pressure. ER Director Richard Coleman watched from the observation window with folded arms. "She's too slow," he muttered. "She'll never survive a real trauma shift." A senior surgeon laughed. "Give her something impossible. She'll quit before lunch." Emily heard every word but kept working without looking up. Years earlier she had learned that arguing with people determined to underestimate you was a waste of precious energy. The automatic doors exploded open. 6 heavily armed Navy SEALs rushed inside carrying 6 wounded teammates. Their uniforms were soaked with blood, faces covered with dust and smoke. Someone shouted that a military transport helicopter had crashed during a classified rescue mission only 20 miles away. Every trauma room instantly filled. Doctors scrambled from one patient to another, realizing all 6 soldiers required immediate surgery. Massive blood loss, internal injuries, multiple fractures, collapsed lungs. Minutes separated survival from death. Director Coleman scanned the crowded operating schedule. "We only have 3 surgical teams ready." A military officer stepped forward. "You don't have 3 hours. They all go now." The room froze. Coleman looked around. Then his eyes landed on Emily. "You wanted experience," he said with a mocking grin. "Congratulations. Take operating room 7. Handle the other 6 until someone becomes available." Several nurses stared in disbelief. "Sir," one whispered, "one nurse can't manage 6 critical patients." Coleman shrugged. "Exactly." A few doctors exchanged uncomfortable glances. They understood what he was doing. He expected the frightened young nurse to fail spectacularly. Emily simply nodded. "I'll need every available monitor, blood warmer, portable ventilator, and surgical cart moved into one room." The confidence in her voice caught everyone off guard. Within seconds she transformed the operating suite into a coordinated battlefield command center. She rapidly examined each injured SEAL, marking foreheads with colored surgical pens. Blue first. Red second. Green stabilize. Yellow chest tube. Black no not today. The one medic blinked. "That's battlefield triage." Emily never answered. Instead she inserted chest tubes, controlled arterial bleeding, ordered medications, and directed volunteers with astonishing precision. "You," she pointed toward an intern, "compress here. Don't stop until I tell you." Another surgeon stepped closer. "What exactly are you doing?" "Buying 6 men enough time to live." The first operation began before anyone realized she had started. Without hesitation Emily repaired a ruptured artery while simultaneously giving instructions across the room. "Increase plasma, rotate ventilation, prepare external fixation." Every order arrived seconds before the crisis appeared. One SEAL flatlined. The monitor screamed. Panic spread instantly. Emily never looked away from her incision. "Charge to 200. "But you're operating." "I know." "Shock him now." The paddle struck. The heartbeat returned. Nobody breathed until the monitor settled into a steady rhythm. Outside the operating room, Director Coleman folded his arms confidently. This disaster will end her career. But inside, something extraordinary had only just begun. The impossible rhythm inside operating room 7 became almost hypnotic. Emily moved from one table to the next with absolute focus, never wasting a single motion. She stitched a torn artery, checked a monitor, adjusted a ventilator, then immediately crossed to another wounded SEAL whose blood pressure had begun crashing. To everyone watching, it looked impossible. To Emily, it looked familiar. The military medics exchanged stunned glances. Where did she learn to work like this? One whispered, "No civilian hospital teaches that." Emily ignored every question. Her attention belonged entirely to the 6 men fighting for another breath. She memorized every heartbeat, every oxygen level, every subtle change in skin color. She anticipated complications before the machines detected them. One surgeon finally stepped beside her. "You need help." "I need hands that follow instructions." Emily answered calmly. "Can you do that?" The surgeon hesitated for a second before nodding. "Good. Clamp here. Don't move." Within minutes the operating room transformed. Nurses, residents, and surgeons who had mocked her only an hour earlier were now carrying out her commands without hesitation. Somehow she kept everyone synchronized, assigning each person a task with remarkable precision. Suddenly one of the SEALs began hemorrhaging internally. Blood soaked the surgical drapes almost instantly. "We're losing him," someone shouted. Emily reached inside the wound with steady hands. "No," she replied quietly. "We're finding him." She compressed the damaged vessel with her fingers while directing another nurse to prepare vascular graft material. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitors. Now, the clamp locked into place. The bleeding stopped. A collective breath filled the room. Outside, Director Coleman checked his watch with growing confidence. "It's been nearly 40 minutes," he said. "Soon they'll start bringing bodies out." Instead, the operating room doors opened only long enough for a circulating nurse to request additional surgical supplies. "More blood units," she called. "All 6 are still alive." Coleman's expression tightened. Inside, Emily completed another life-saving repair. Sweat covered her forehead, but her hands remained perfectly steady. One unconscious SEAL weakly raised his hand and caught her wrist. His eyes opened for only a moment. "Phoenix," he whispered. Emily froze. The name had not been spoken in years. She gently squeezed his hand. "Save your strength, Lieutenant." The soldier nodded almost imperceptibly before drifting back into unconsciousness. The military officer standing nearby stared at her in disbelief. Only members of one classified overseas medical unit had ever known the call sign Phoenix. He slowly stepped backward and reached for his secure radio. "This is Commander Hayes," he said quietly. "Confirm identity immediately. I believe we've just found the combat surgeon everyone thought was lost." Across the room, Emily continued operating as though she had heard nothing. The clock reached exactly 1 hour. 6 surgeries. 6 steady heartbeats. 6 Navy SEALs still alive. And outside the operating room, the people who had laughed at the quiet young nurse were about to discover that her greatest secret had never been her skill. It was who she had truly been before she ever walked into their hospital. The operating room finally fell silent except for the gentle rhythm of 6 heart monitors. Every patient had survived. Exhausted nurses leaned against the walls, hardly believing what they had witnessed. Surgeons who had entered expecting disaster now stared at Emily with a mixture of disbelief and respect. No one spoke first because no one could explain how a nurse they had mocked all morning had accomplished what should have required several experienced trauma teams. Director Coleman pushed through the doors, expecting chaos. Instead, he found 6 stabilized Navy SEALs being prepared for recovery. "This is impossible," he whispered. Emily removed her gloves and looked at him without anger. "No," she said quietly. "It only looked impossible because nobody believed I could do it." Before Coleman could answer, the sound of helicopter blades thundered across the hospital roof. The emergency department windows rattled as another military aircraft landed outside. Within moments, heavily armed operators entered the hallway, followed by a gray-haired admiral wearing rows of combat ribbons. Every conversation stopped. The admiral walked directly to Emily. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the decorated officer stood at attention and rendered a formal salute. "Commander Emily Carter," he said proudly. "It's an honor to see you again." The entire hospital froze. Director Coleman looked from the admiral to the quiet nurse. "Commander." The admiral nodded. Years ago, before she disappeared from military service, Commander Carter led one of the most advanced combat medical units our country ever assembled. During overseas operations, she performed emergency surgeries under enemy fire, saving dozens of lives when evacuation was impossible. Her call sign was Phoenix because wherever hope seemed to die, she brought it back. The military officer who had recognized the name stepped forward. "We searched for her after she resigned." Emily smiled gently. "I didn't disappear. I simply wanted to help people without rank deciding whether I deserved respect." One of the recovering SEALs was wheeled past, still weak but awake. He lifted a trembling hand toward her. "You kept your promise," he said. Emily squeezed his shoulder. "I told you to save your strength. You've still got a mission ahead." The tears filled the soldier's eyes. "So do you?" Director Coleman lowered his head. "I judged you before I knew anything about you. I turned your greatest test into a joke." Emily looked around the room at every doctor and nurse. "We all make mistakes," she answered. "The important thing is whether we learn from them before someone pays the price." One by one, the staff members who had laughed at her stepped forward to apologize. She accepted every apology with quiet grace, knowing that humility often changed hearts more deeply than humiliation ever could. Weeks later, all 6 Navy SEALs walked back into the hospital together. Their scars remained, but so did their smiles. They presented Emily with a folded American flag and a simple plaque engraved with 6 words: 1 hour, 6 lives, 1 unforgettable hero. The hallway erupted in applause as doctors, nurses, patients, and families stood together to honor the woman they had once underestimated. Some heroes wear medals that everyone can see. Others wear ordinary scrubs, carrying extraordinary courage where no one thinks to look. And sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one everyone ignored until the moment everything depended on them. If this story reminded you never to judge a person by appearances, and to recognize quiet courage wherever it exists, make sure to subscribe for more unforgettable stories of honor, sacrifice, and heroes who prove that true greatness is revealed when the world expects them to fail.